Hey guys, tonight we drift into the damp chill of a northern fjord where the sea laps lazily at wooden docks and the morning mist wraps the world in a sleepy blur. A crooked row of tar-stained houses leans toward the water like old fishermen squinting into the dawn. You hear gulls crying overhead, sharp and persistent like they've been up all night complaining. The boat beneath your boots creaks tired from the journey, and your sack of trade goods shifts slightly, reminding you you're not here for a vacation. You've arrived in a Viking trading town, so obscure even your well-traveled uncle with the strange maps and missing fingers hasn't heard of it. The name's impossible to spell, mostly vowels and that weird D letter, and the locals just grunt when they say it anyway. You're here because once upon a time someone told you amber beads fetched a decent price and you believed them. You, my brave, sleep-deprived, slightly seasick friend, are about to enter the underappreciated world of Viking logistics. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, post your location and what time you're watching. I love seeing where you're all listening from. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You step off the boat onto damp planks slick with seaweed and fish guts. The air smells of salt smoke and yesterday's herring. A goat bleats disapprovingly at your arrival, perhaps offended by your travel-stained tunic or the fact that you're blocking its path. The harbor is bustling in a disorganized Nordic kind of way. No shouting dockmasters here, just people who assume you'll get out of the way before something heavy hits you. This town isn't like the grand trading hubs of the Mediterranean. It's modest, a little muddy. But make no mistake, deals made here ripple across seas and kingdoms. Wooden crates filled with walrus ivory, beeswax, and furs pile next to sacks of grain and foreign trinkets from lands you've only heard of in sagas. Someone's unloading what looks suspiciously like peacock feathers. You blink, wondering if it's the mead still in your system. Nope. Definitely feathers. A group of women in russet and indigo cloaks are bartering over salt. Salt, the stuff you ignore at dinner. Here it's gold dust. You watch as one woman gestures emphatically with a dried fish. The other shakes her head. Bartering is less math and more theater. Historians still argue whether these smaller Viking towns functioned more as seasonal outposts or permanent settlements. What we do know: by the early 10th century, many had grown roots trading, farming, and building something more than just temporary ports. As you pass a stall selling smoked eel, no thank you, you spot something truly shocking: a child leading a goose on a string. The goose looks deeply unamused, and the child equally so. Is it for sale? For show, for emotional support, you'll never know. You adjust your sack, which contains 3 lengths of woven wool, a pouch of amber beads, and a tin flask you're pretty sure is leaking. You've made it to the edge of the market square, where a blackened post supports a painted sign too faded to read. A man with a suspiciously sharp smile eyes you from beneath his fur hat. He's either a trader or someone who trades in people who forget to haggle. First time he asks, you nod. He chuckles. Don't lose your boots. You don't plan to. But then again, nobody plans to get swindled. A pair of longhouses loom at the far end of the market, one belching smoke, the other silent, its doors thrown open. People bustle in and out of both. One's a tavern. The other, maybe the town hall. Maybe the place where disputes are settled via shouting contests, hard to tell. A bearded man yells in Old Norse, possibly at you, or at his sheep, which has decided to browse the edge of a merchant's table. Either way, it's time to find your footing. The wind picks up, carrying the faint scent of dried herbs and damp wool. Your fingers are cold, your boots are wet, and your heart is racing, but there's something about this strange little place. It breathes history. Not the kind with kings and conquest, but the kind that smells like turnips and sounds like boots on wet earth. And that's where we'll begin. You, a stranger with a lumpy sack of probably underpriced goods, standing at the edge of a Viking marketplace as the fog lifts and the town begins to hum. No sword fights, no dragon ships, just trade tedium and the awkward realization that your pouch of coins, it's still on the boat. You glance over your shoulder toward the boat, and yes, your pouch of coins is right where you left it, dangling from the bench seat, like a fish baited for pickpockets. You mutter something that would get you exiled from most monasteries and jog back through the muddy lane. The goat you passed earlier gives you a look that says amateur. As you skid back to the dock, your boots splashing in puddles that could be older than some Viking kings, you realize just how precarious life in this town is. It's not just the mud or the sharp-eyed merchants sizing up your boots. It's the rhythm of trade, the unspoken rules of barter, and the thousand little routines that make this market run smoother than a freshly whetted blade. Coins retrieved and pride moderately salvaged, you head back toward the heart of town. This time you notice things you missed before: a row of iron cauldrons bubbling over peat fires, a crooked arch made of driftwood marking the start of the craftsman's quarter, and a dog with 3 legs hobbling confidently past a cart of turnips. Everyone here seems to know exactly where they're going. Everyone but you. There's no town map, of course, no "you are here" markers. But you begin to realize the layout of this place is less about roads and more about relationships. The blacksmith is near the fishmonger, not because it's logical, but because his wife prefers fresh halibut. The herbalist's stall sits in the corner of the square, not for visibility, but because it gets just the right amount of sun to dry thyme on a string above her counter. Historians still argue whether Viking towns like this developed organically or followed a deliberate plan. Some archaeologists claim the irregular layout was a product of necessity, following land contours or trade winds. Others believe the seemingly random sprawl masked a deeper logic known only to those who lived it. You pause at a stall where a young boy is selling ink made from oak galls. He dips a feather quill into a tiny vial and writes your name backwards on a scrap of birch bark. You don't remember telling him your name. You don't ask questions. Nearby, a woman in a deep saffron cloak sits at a loom weaving a tapestry that seems to show a ship with too many sails and a sea serpent with suspiciously good posture. She hums a tune that you half remember from some forgotten bard's tale. You stand watching her for a moment too long, because the next thing you know, you're being elbowed aside by a man with a crate of onions and 0 patience. "Watch your feet," he growls. You step aside, apologizing in a language you hope is close enough to Old Norse to avoid offense. The onion crate disappears into the tavern with a groan and a thud. Your stomach answers the call, growling loud enough to startle a nearby hen. You haven't eaten since the boat, and the smell of spit-roasted fish, freshly baked barley bread, and something suspiciously like caramelized parsnips is too much to resist. You head for the food vendors. A heavy-set woman with flour on her apron waves you over. She points at a large pot and says something that sounds like, "Don't ask, just eat." You obey. Whatever it is, it's hot, salty, and satisfies something primal in your bones. As you sit on a worn bench, chewing something vaguely fishy, a small child approaches, holding a carved wooden horse. He offers it to you solemnly. You're about to accept when he pulls it back and laughs, then runs off shouting something about Njord's beard. You're not sure if you've been blessed or cursed. A group of traders huddles nearby, speaking low and fast, their hands gesturing toward a boat still unloading crates. You catch fragments. Frankish wine, Celtic bracelets, illegally smuggled saffron. The words blur, and you suddenly realize that this market is more than it appears. It's a living, breathing network. Goods, gossip, and secrets all move through the same invisible channels. You finish your meal just as the midday sun punches through the mist, casting the whole town in a golden hue. The fish stink becomes tolerable. The mud dries a little. Even the goat seems less judgmental. You wander toward the edge of the market where a wooden platform holds a collection of curious goods. Here oddities rule: tiny glass beads from Byzantium curved knives with runes etched into the blades, a bronze mirror so polished it reflects more dreams than faces. You spot a merchant whose wares include a taxidermied seagull posed mid-attack. You stare. He nods solemnly. You back away. One item catches your eye, a small leather-bound scroll. The vendor, a stooped man with hands like tree roots, tells you it's a map not of land, but of tides. "Taught to me by a mad monk," he says with a wink. You hand over 2 amber beads. Whether it's real or not, it feels important. As the sun climbs and the crowds thicken, you realize you've stopped being a stranger. You're still new, yes, but the town has absorbed you. You've nodded to the woman with the parsnips. You've avoided the man with the onions. You've shared soup with a dozen traders who now know you as that one with the leaking flask. And that really is the essence of this place. Not swords or sagas, but soup and scrolls, laughter and trade. A rhythm that pulses through the muddy streets and anchors the town to something bigger than its size suggests. You follow the smell of smoked fish down a narrow lane where wooden planks have been laid over the soft ground like a promise that your boots won't drown. They lie to you. Your left foot sinks anyway. Still, the scent pulls you forward. It's not unpleasant, more like something your great-uncle might have made on a dare then gotten famous for. Here, along the edge of the harbor, the real business happens. Not the polite bartering of woven belts or carved chess pieces, but the gritty necessary trade that keeps bellies full and winters survivable. Fishmongers haul in their catch wrapped in nets still dripping. Gulls wheel overhead in a chaos of wings and shrieks, arguing over scraps like scholars with no conference moderator. You pause by a weathered stall where a woman with wind-burned cheeks is slicing open herring with a bone-handled knife. Her hands move like memory, fast, sure, and completely disinterested in anything you might say. Next to her, a girl no older than 10 salts the fillets and layers them into wooden barrels with a rhythm that could pass for a lullaby. She looks up, catches you watching, and gives you the tiniest nod like, "Yeah, I know I'm good at this." Historians still debate whether Viking fish preservation techniques were more sophisticated than their European neighbors. Some say their combination of salt curing and cold smoking was way ahead of its time. Others claim it was just necessity with good marketing. Either way, the result smells sharp enough to slap you awake. As you drift along the docks, your eye catches on a boat mid-unloading its hull packed with long iron nails, coils of hemp rope, and one very confused sheep. The crew, shouting in 3 different dialects, tries to negotiate with a merchant whose beard is plaited into something resembling a pretzel. It's unclear whether the sheep is for sale part of the crew or just emotionally invested in the proceedings. Beyond the boats, the sea stretches out like a sheet of hammered pewter, choppy with wind and cold promise. You notice a small boy squatting at the edge of a pier throwing bits of bread to the fish below. His mother scolds him in a tone that suggests the bread was meant for someone's dinner. He replies with a phrase that might mean, "They're hungry too." Or possibly, "You're not the boss of me." Either way, she smacks the back of his head gently, and he laughs. A little farther on, you encounter a small gathering of traders, discussing cargo taxes. They speak in low tones, but grow animated when someone mentions a recent storm that wrecked half a shipment of Baltic honey. Apparently, a jar floated ashore unbroken, and now the children fight over who owns the world's stickiest prize. You lean against a barrel and look around. The harbor is a theater, and you're both actor and audience. Boats come and go. People shout, laugh, argue, embrace. Dogs nap in the shade of crates. It's loud, busy, and smells like salt fish and ambition. Then something catches your attention, a man standing quietly at the end of the pier staring out to sea. His cloak is a deep russet heavy with salt crust. He's holding a small wooden charm in one hand worn smooth by years of fingers. You don't ask his story, but you feel it. Loss maybe, or waiting, or hope. The 3 are not so different depending on the tide. Turning inland, you find a row of small workshops, tucked beneath the overhang of a larger building. Here the hum of trade gives way to the clink of tools and the scrape of metal. A young smith is bent over a blade, sparks flying as he sharpens it against a whetstone. Nearby, his apprentice pumps a bellows with the sort of concentration usually reserved for tightrope walkers. Inside the next door, a leatherworker works silently, stitching together a saddle with careful fingers. You notice a pattern etched into the leather waves, perhaps, or serpents. Maybe both. The craftsman doesn't look up, but you see the edge of a smile when you linger too long. He knows his work speaks better than he does. Historians still argue whether Viking towns like this operated on a formal guild system or informal apprenticeships. Evidence suggests both. Some trades likely passed from father to son, others absorbed curious wanderers who showed up, asked questions, and didn't mind getting burned occasionally. The sun is past its peak now, and the town begins to shift again. Morning labor gives way to afternoon repairs. Nets are mended. Barrels are sealed. Roofs are patched with thatch soaked in brine. It's a rhythm not bound by clocks, but by the movement of clouds and gulls and the angle of light on seawater. A bell rings, not a church bell, but a market signal. You're not sure what it means, but everyone else seems to. A group of boys dashes past chasing a runaway chicken that has zero interest in becoming dinner. One of them yells something about Thor's hammer, and you're not sure if he's swearing or naming the bird. You wander to the edge of town where a fence made of driftwood and ambition separates the final few houses from the open fields. Here, a woman tends a garden of herbs feverfew yarrow and something that might be wolfsbane, though you don't ask. She offers you a sprig of mint and tells you to chew it if the fish fights back. You take it gratefully. As the wind picks up carrying scents of pine and smoke, you realize how connected everything is here. Trade and tide, fish and fire, rope and rumor. You're not just observing anymore, you're part of the pattern. The mint leaf lingers on your tongue as you drift back into the town's core. It's quieter now, not silent, just subdued like a market after its morning storm. This is when you notice details you missed before, the way flax is laid out to dry in thin golden ribbons, how door hinges creak in an almost rhythmic fashion, and the low hum of conversation in half a dozen languages. You follow the sound of stringed music, delicate, hesitant, like someone coaxing a song from memory. It leads you to a shaded courtyard where a man sits cross-legged on a fur mat plucking a lyre. His beard is streaked with gray, but his hands are young, fast, precise, alive. Around him, a few listeners sit in a semicircle, eyes half-lidded in contentment. One woman dangles a basket of half-spun wool from her wrist, completely still, except for her foot, which taps lightly to the rhythm. The performer doesn't notice you, or maybe he does and just doesn't care. His fingers move as if they belong to someone else, someone centuries older. You lean against a timber post, careful not to disturb the moment. The notes float thin as smoke, then settle like ash. A girl hums along, a boy yawns dramatically. Somewhere, a dog farts. Historians still argue whether these kinds of public performances were formal events or just casual eruptions of culture. Some say music was central to Viking ritual life. Others insist it was more of a fireside indulgence. What's certain is that when the lyre stops, the world feels less interesting for a moment. You slip away and duck into one of the larger longhouses lining the street. The interior is smoky, but cozy light filters through a hole in the roof, catching the particles like dust in a sunbeam cathedral. This place smells of pine tar stew and secrets. It's not a home exactly, more of a community hearth, a halfway house for gossip and ale. Benches line the walls, carved with patterns you recognize from other corners of the town, interwoven animals, spirals, sunbursts. Each has been smoothed by years of backsides and elbows. You lower yourself onto one and take in the space. A woman near the hearth pours ladles of thick barley stew into shallow wooden bowls. Her son, maybe 10, passes them to guests with the confidence of a tiny innkeeper. You accept yours with a nod, thankful for the warmth. The flavor is earthy, solid, comforting in a way only soup can be when you've been walking for hours and pretending you're not tired. A man next to you burps softly, apologizes less softly, and winks. Hospitality here isn't fussy, it's hearty. A group of elders debates something at the far end of the hall, voices, rising, then falling like a wave breaking on stone. You catch words like silverweight the fins and last year's frost. No one wins, but no one has to. The point isn't agreement, it's being heard. The hearth crackles, and for a moment you forget you're in a reenactment of a past life. It feels real. The texture of the spoon in your hand, the creak of the longhouse timbers, the sharp scent of juniper burning under the stew pot. You could stay here, you could nap, you almost do, but then someone starts singing, not like the lyre earlier. This is louder, messier, almost a chant. A drinking song with more volume than pitch, led by a man with a nose red enough to light a sleigh. People join in, not for melody, but for fun. Even the stew-ladling woman belts a line while still ladling. You laugh, sip your soup, and feel something loosen in your chest. Vikings are often painted as stern or savage, but this moment, this goofy off-key chorus is just as true. They were builders and breakers, traders and raiders, sure. But they were also singers, jokers, people who burned the soup and blamed the dog. Historians still debate whether longhouses were primarily used for communal gatherings or just large family homes. The archaeological evidence is mixed. Some show signs of multiple hearths, others reveal feasting debris that could rival a royal court. But here in this memory, it's all of the above. You finish your stew, return the bowl to a wooden tub by the door, and step back outside. The sun is lower now, shadows longer, and the sky is that aching blue you only get near the sea. The streets are dusted with sawdust and hay softening the sound of footsteps. Nearby, a girl tosses scraps to chickens in a fenced yard. They peck greedily, clucking with more drama than necessary. A rooster eyes you suspiciously as if judging your posture. You bow slightly just in case. At the edge of the square, you find a makeshift stall covered in embroidered cloths, deep blues, earthy reds and yellows like dandelions. The woman behind it smiles at you, then returns to stitching a band of linen with tiny bone needles. Her hands are swift, her expression serene. You watch her create flowers out of thread-tiny petals forming like frost on glass. She gestures toward a pile of finished work headbands, tunics, even a woolen bag with a stitched wolf chasing a moon. You imagine what it would feel like to wear one heavy with effort, light with pride. You don't need a bag, but you nod respectfully. She nods back. Some exchanges don't need coins. You leave the square behind and climb a small rise overlooking the harbor. From here, the town looks like a puzzle spilled onto the shore ships, like toothpicks, houses like scattered dice. Smoke rises in calm spirals. Somewhere a bell rings again. The wind here is stronger. It tastes like salt and possibility. You wrap your coat tighter, lean into it, and smile. You're still just a visitor, but it's starting to feel like a return. You descend the hill slowly, the sky behind you now streaked with apricot and soft bruised lavender. It's the kind of light that makes everything look kinder old. Wood glows, shadows stretch like lazy cats, and even the muddy paths seem less grumpy about being stepped on. Your boots crunch softly over gravel, and the town exhales around you, not in sleep yet, but in a quieter rhythm. Evening brings a gentler pulse. Past the square nestled between two longhouses, you spot a bathhouse. Steam snakes through the cracks in the doorframe, curling into the evening air, like it's escaping with secrets. A boy with a mop of straw-colored hair is hauling water from a barrel, spilling half of it as he stumbles inside. He grins at you like you've shared an inside joke. You haven't, but it's that kind of town. Inside, the air is thick with heat and the sharp, clean scent of birch. You imagine stepping in, stripping off your layers, stiff with sea air, and smoke lowering yourself into water warmed by fire, not gods. Viking bathhouses weren't mere luxuries. They were rituals of sanity, especially in long winters. Cleanliness here wasn't just for health. It was social currency. Historians still argue whether every Viking town had a formal bathhouse, or whether this was more common in wealthier trading centers. Some say shared baths were a weekly fixture. Others argue they were saved for festivals or visiting dignitaries with sensitive noses. The steam wraps around you even through the cracks. You hear a woman laugh inside the low splash of water and the thud of someone dropping a bucket. It's intimate but not secretive. Just another part of life. You move on, brushing past a sleeping cat curled beside the door. Its ear flicks in protest. You whisper an apology. At the edge of town, you find a path that winds through a patch of trees. Thin, crooked things, more like determined shrubs than true forest. But it's quiet here, and the canopy dapples the ground in sleepy patches of gold. You follow the trail until it opens onto a clearing where two young boys are wrestling, laughing breathlessly. One pins the other, then immediately offers a hand to pull him up. Their father watches, nearby arms folded, chewing on something that looks like dried seaweed. Training, play both. The line blurs when you grow up expecting raids and river crossings by the time your voice cracks. The boys nod to you as you pass, too proud to look winded. You circle back toward the edge of the harbor, where where workers now haul in the last of the goods. Barrels, sacks, bundles of fur, and more than a few tired-looking goats. A woman counts aloud as each item is marked with ochre symbols. It's an impromptu system, but it works like most things here. You overhear part of a conversation between two older men, their arms thick with years of rope pulling and ore churning. They're reminiscing about a trip to Novgorod. One swears they were nearly taken captive. The other insists it was just a bad tavern and worse vodka. You smile. History doesn't always wear armor. Sometimes it wears a joke and a beer belly. Not far from them, a young couple sits on a barrel whispering. She plats his hair. He pretends not to enjoy it. She pretends she's not smiling. The kind of romance that doesn't need candlelight or poetry, just shared silence and strong fingers. You walk on. The central street is narrower than you remember, or maybe just more crowded now. Fires crackle in iron braziers outside homes, their warmth spilling into the street. A child chases a chicken again. You suspect it's the same chicken from earlier. If there were an afterlife for birds, this one is surely earning sainthood. Then you hear the clang of metal, sharp, precise. It draws you like a moth. You follow the sound to a forge tucked into a lean-to beside a stone wall. A blacksmith stands shirtless despite the chill skin glowing with sweat and firelight. His arms move like pistons. Sparks leap like fireflies. The metal he works is not a weapon today, it's a horseshoe. Or a hinge, or something simpler still. Tools, after all, keep towns alive. Axes split wood. Nails hold roofs. Pins keep carts rolling. Historians still debate whether Viking towns leaned more on local craftsmen or imported finished goods from trade. The evidence is mixed, but here it's clear if you need something, someone nearby can make it. A teenage apprentice fans the fire eyes wide with admiration. You suspect this is more than duty. It's a kind of worship of the process of transformation. A way to learn power one hammer strike at a time. You linger a bit, letting the rhythmic clang lull your thoughts. Then quietly you turn back toward the center of town. By now, dusk has deepened. The air is cooler, tinged with smoke and damp earth. Lanterns flicker from wooden brackets, their glow soft and amber. You pass a dog asleep beneath one snoring, softly twitching like it's dreaming of faster prey. Somewhere a bell chimes, not loud, not urgent, just a note to mark the time. You return to the longhouse you'd passed earlier, now lit from within like a warm breath. People trickle in and out, traders, fishermen, elders with tired backs and sharp eyes. You duck inside. The air greets you like an old friend. Stew again, yes, but richer now. Spiced. Emboldened by the kind of ingredients only show up when the right ship docks. A woman ladles it into bowls while two men argue good-naturedly over whether or not they've salted the barrels correctly this season. You find a bench settle in. There's laughter here. Dry, cracked voices telling jokes so old the punchlines are fossils. And younger ones, too, just learning where to laugh. The longhouse is alive. Outside night gathers slow and sure. You sip the stew sigh and lean back. You've walked this town, watched it work, felt its rhythms. And somehow you've become part of its dusk, too. You blink slowly, half-full bowl of stew warm against your palms. Around you, the low thrum of evening in the longhouse continues, knuckles drumming tabletops. Spoons clinking, wood voices trading stories like they're bartering fish. The place smells like damp wool broth smoke and life. There's a kind of dense contentment in the air, like this is the reward for a day well survived. Across the fire, an old man is carving runes into a flat piece of bone. His hands are speckled with age and his tongue peeks out slightly between his teeth as he works. You realize he's not just passing time. He's writing something, a record, maybe a trade agreement, maybe a prayer, maybe both. With the Vikings, that line gets fuzzy. Historians still argue whether most Norse folk were literate, or if rune carving was reserved for a priestly or merchant class. Some bones tell elaborate tales. Others just read. Thor was here the Viking equivalent of bathroom graffiti. You'd like to believe it was both. The fire pops. Embers rise. Someone starts humming a low-tuned minor and slow, almost a lullaby, but too full of sea wind and memory to be that gentle. You listen, eyes heavy, but not yet. You rise from the bench and step back into the night. The stars have pulled their blanket tight, speckling the sky in uneven patches. The moon hangs low plump and uninterested in your business. The town is quieter now, but not asleep. No, there's movement, still shadows leaning against buildings, shapes shifting behind stretched-hide windows. You follow a narrow path to a smaller home, its door hanging open just enough to suggest welcome, not intrusion. Inside, a woman stirs a pot over a low hearth, humming the same tune you heard in the longhouse. A child leans against her leg thumb, tucked stubbornly into their mouth. She glances up, gives you a tired smile, and keeps stirring. This is where you see the heart of things. The trade, the metal, the boats, they all serve this. A moment of warmth, a roof, a pot with something inside. Even the fiercest raiders come home somewhere. You slip out again, not wanting to intrude on their calm. The wind has turned whispering of rain. You pull your coat tighter, feel the prickle of dampness in the air. Down near the docks, a small crowd has gathered around a crate. It's been cracked open and reveals bright cloth-dyed wool in brilliant reds and sun-drenched yellows. A trader is holding up lengths of fabric, letting them catch the wind like banners. People reach out to touch, to gasp, to weigh with their eyes what they could trade for a single strip. Dyes were rare. A luxury. Some made from insects, others from plants only grown under foreign skies. Historians still argue how much access Viking towns had to consistent luxury imports. But clearly, they had enough to tempt a trade to treasure. One boy offers a string of carved fish hooks, another a polished shell. The trader raises his eyebrows but doesn't laugh. He just shakes his head gently. You pass on, leaving the fluttering cloth behind like a dream. Now deeper into the side streets, though, streets may be generous. Their foot-worn paths hemmed by stacked stones and old fence posts. Here things are quieter, homes smaller, fires fainter, but the sense of rhythm remains. Someone's chopping wood by moonlight, each stroke echoing in the cool stillness. Another figure crouches beside a pen, murmuring to goats. A dog growls low, then goes silent. It's not threat, it's ritual. A reminder that everything here watches everything else. You pass a small shrine built into the side of a wall. Bones hang from a string, gently clicking together. A carved stone rests in the center, painted with faded red spirals. Offerings surround it, bits of bread, a shiny pebble, a feather. Not grand, not formal, but full of something older than words. You linger a moment, whisper nothing, walk on. In the distance, a group of young people is gathered around a small bonfire outside one of the larger homes. They're laughing loud and honest, the kind of laughter that makes your ribs ache in the best way. One of them strums something like a lyre. Another tries to sing but keeps getting elbowed by the girl beside him. You sit on a rock near the edge of their circle, unnoticed, or perhaps just welcomed by default. The music is clumsy, but good-hearted. The jokes are in a language you barely catch, but laughter is universal. One boy suddenly jumps up, gesturing dramatically with a stick and launching into a story. The crowd groans. He's clearly known for this, but they settle in anyway, mock annoyed and amused. He spins a tale of a sea serpent that swallowed a wedding feast only to choke on a particularly dry piece of bread. It's silly, it's perfect. The fire crackles, the stars blink slowly. Historians still debate whether Norse towns had true bards, or if storytelling was more democratic, shared among those with the best memory or loudest voice. Either way, stories like this outlive walls. Eventually, you rise, bones protesting slightly. The group waves you off like an old friend. You take the long path back to the hill, overlooking the town. From there, it all spreads out before you, lanterns flickering like fireflies. Roofs shining dully in moonlight, ships bobbing gently in their sleep. It's not a capital, not a famous city, just a place where people live. But that's the magic, isn't it? Not the battles, not the kings, just this. Daily life, mundane, sacred, repeating. You sit down in the grass, feel the dew start to settle in your hair, and you let the town hum you to sleep. The sky is a pale smear of silver when you wake. Dawn, but barely. The kind of light that makes everything look like it was drawn in charcoal and then smudged with a thumb. The town isn't awake yet. Only the chickens are bold enough to cluck into the silence. And maybe one goat. Always one goat. You stretch vertebrae cracking like ice in a spring river and begin wandering toward the riverbank. where smoke from breakfast fires is just beginning to thread upward. Here, where the shoreline curves like a sleeping serpent, you find the laundrywomen. Not a formal profession, just neighbors with strong arms, stiff backs, and endless things to scrub. They crouch beside low wooden frames, linen spread over stones, pale fingers already raw from cold water. One woman sings while she works something rhythmic, ancient, half-hummed and half-sung. You catch only snippets about a child a sea that never gives back what it takes. The others join in by habit, their voices weaving a net between them. Historians still argue whether Viking women held power in public trade or remained mostly domestic. But anyone watching this scene could see here in the rhythm of work there's authority, the kind earned, not declared. You crouch nearby, trailing a stick through the silt. The water is glassy, pulling tiny clouds into its reflections. A girl beside you is scrubbing something stubborn from a tunic. She grins, mutters about ale spills and useless brothers. You smile back, glad that not all things change over centuries. Soon others arrive. A man with a small basket of fish still twitching. 2 children carrying bundles of herbs. A small cart clattering over pebbles, driven by a boy barely old enough to tie his own tunic. The town's pulse is picking up. You follow the flow toward the marketplace. There's no gate, no formal border, just a wide open space between buildings where stones and dirt have been trampled into something like a plaza. Traders are setting up their wares on low tables, rugs, and in some cases the backs of wagons. It's a collage of activity, one woman arranging antler combs, another smoothing dyed wool, a man slicing cured meat into long, fragrant ribbons. The air smells like honey smoke and salt, maybe something vaguely fishy, probably that meat guy. You linger near a stall selling bronze trinkets, brooches, shaped like birds' tiny fish hammers of Thor. The vendor is missing 2 teeth and has eyes like a crow, sharp, unreadable. He watches you with curiosity, then with mild amusement as you fumble to pick up a pendant shaped like a sunburst. "You've got soft hands," he says, chuckling. "Scholar or thief?" You decide not to answer. Just smile, place the pendant down gently, and move on. A cart rolls in from the east gate, or rather the absence of a gate. It's pulled by a stocky horse and driven by a dark-haired woman with a cloak the color of storm clouds. Everyone turns slightly as she enters. New traders always bring interest. She halts in the center, hops down, and throws open the back of the cart. Inside, glassware, actual honest-to-Odin glass, bottles, cups, a pitcher shaped like a bird with a looped handle. The crowd gathers quickly, whispering. Glass was rare here, a luxury. Not made locally, but traded sometimes from as far as the Byzantine Empire. Historians still debate how much of it reached small towns like this one, or whether the glass was reused over generations. Either way, it's not every day a stranger shows up with a trunk full of it. A boy reaches for a cup and gets his hand gently slapped away. The merchant smiles politely and begins arranging her goods on a thick woolen mat. Nearby, a man selling salted herring grumbles about distractions, but you can tell he's watching too. Further down, a woman with a stall full of herbs is making small pouches, little bundles of dried plants tied with twine. She offers you one. For dreams, she says. Or headaches. Or both. You take it. It smells like crushed mint and river stones. The square is busier now. A dog darts underfoot. Someone's playing a reed pipe. Children yell from somewhere behind the meat stall. And that's when you hear it, a clang. Not loud, not alarming. Just the clear rhythmic sound of metal on metal. The blacksmith. You follow the sound like it's pulling you on a string. His forge is set back slightly from the main square, nestled beneath a low thatched awning. Smoke curls from the vent in thin fingers. Sparks spit occasionally from the open mouth of the furnace. And in front of it stands the blacksmith himself, shirtless arms marked by soot and scars, hammer in hand. He's shaping something small today. Not a blade, maybe a key, or a pin. Something delicate that still needs fire to be born. Historians still argue whether Viking blacksmiths passed their trade through family lines, or if skill alone dictated succession. Either way, this man has the hands of someone whose life is measured in the weight of tools and the heat of embers. You stand silently watching the hammer rise and fall. He doesn't look at you, but he knows you're there. You want something, he asks without turning. You shake your head, just watching. He grunts, satisfied. Then watch properly. You do. Around you, the town hums louder. It's fully awake now, and so are you, caught between time and place, between fire and sleep. By midday, the marketplace is humming like a hive. The town has shed its early morning hush, and now every corner echoes with the thud of footsteps, laughter, clanging pots, and the occasional indignant chicken. You've drifted back toward the center, where the energy gathers like water at a drain. The traders are louder now, hawking wares with increasing flair, fresh from the fjord. One yells, holding up a fish with glassy eyes. Another waves a length of bright-dyed linen, letting the breeze catch it like a sail. The town's colors are suddenly brighter, too. Saffron skirts, indigo cloaks, russet tunics. Even the dogs seem energized, weaving through legs in search of dropped food. You linger near a stall of carved toys, tiny wooden horses, dragons with curled tails, a stack of little figures in warrior poses. The carver is a stooped man with hands as gnarled as roots. He doesn't speak much, but his eyes are merry. A child reaches for a small bear and he slides it across without a word. The boy beams and runs off, trailing thanks like a kite tail. In one corner of the market square, a circle is forming. You push closer, curious. At the center, a woman stands barefoot on a tree stump, her arms raised dramatically. A storyteller. Her hair is braided in loops around her head, and her dress is the deep teal of northern lakes. She speaks in a rhythm voice, rising and falling like waves. The crowd leans in. You catch phrases. Sea serpent storm slick decks. A blade that drank thunder. Historians still argue whether Viking oral traditions were mostly poetry, mostly history, or something in between. But whatever this is, it's captivating. The children sit cross-legged, wide-eyed. Even the gruff herring seller from earlier is quietly enthralled. Suddenly she points to you, not accusingly, more like theatrically. And the stranger, she says, the one with silent boots, walks straight into the sea's hunger, carrying only a whisper and a key. Everyone turns. You shrug sheepishly. The crowd laughs. You're part of the story now. You back away, gently smile, lingering, and wander toward the edge of town. The market energy is fading slightly. People are packing up, tucking coins into pouches, tying up bundles with cord. It's the lull before the evening. You find a low stone wall warmed by the sun and sit for a while. Your feet ache pleasantly. Somewhere nearby, a blackbird sings. Your body, lulled by the rhythm of the day, wants rest, but you're not done yet. From this spot, you can see the wooden palisade that marks the town's rough boundary. Beyond it, the land rolls gently into meadows and sparse trees. A few farmsteads dot the horizon. Smoke drifts from one in a lazy spiral. You decide to visit the closest one. The walk is short, 15 minutes, maybe less. Along the way, you pass a woman hauling a bucket of water, a boy herding 3 reluctant sheep, and a man hammering something unidentifiable into a fence post. Everyone nods at you, but says little. The countryside, it seems, doesn't waste words. The farmstead is modest, one longhouse, a couple of lean-tos, a fenced pen with pigs grunting quietly inside. A woman looks up as you approach, then waves you in with a slight motion of her hand. Inside the longhouse, it's dark and smoky, but not unpleasant. The hearth glows steadily. A pot simmers. A child sleeps near the back, wrapped in a fur-lined blanket. You sit near the fire, nodding in thanks as a wooden cup of broth is passed your way. It's good, herby, salty, warming. Probably cabbage. Definitely onion. Your host speaks little, but offers bread and a sliver of cheese. You eat slowly, the way you do when time stretches and there's nothing pushing it forward. You glance around. Tools hang neatly on one wall. A loom occupies the far corner threads, waiting patiently. A small carved figure of Thor sits near the lintel, watching the room with hammer-in-hand seriousness. Historians still debate how much of Viking rural life was communal versus isolated. But here, the atmosphere is unmistakably tight-knit. Every motion feels practiced. Every object has a place. There's a deep logic beneath the modesty. As you leave, the woman presses a small bundle into your hand, dried herbs wrapped in linen. For the road, she says simply. Outside, the sun is lower now. The light is golden and slanted, catching the fields like spilled ale. You head back toward town, passing a group of children, chasing each other with sticks. One wears a half-finished helmet made of wood and leather. A tiny warrior in training. You smile. Back in town, Preparations for evening are underway. Firewood is being stacked, cloaks pulled tighter. You pass by the same market square, now quieter, its voices softened by fatigue. Only the scent of spices and grilled fish lingers clinging to the stones. At the bathhouse, yes, they had them sort of. You find steam curling from a small wooden structure. Inside, a stone-lined pit glows with heat water ladled carefully over it to produce bursts of scented mist. A man hums tunelessly while scrubbing his back with a handful of twigs. You settle in a corner, letting the warmth melt the stiffness in your shoulders. Eyes closed, breath slowing. No one speaks much here either, but you feel connected somehow to everything that came before. To the ships, the stories, the sweat, the soft bread, and the hard winters. This is more than a town. It's a rhythm, a hum beneath history's noise. And you're tuned into it now. You emerge from the bathhouse, loose-limbed and slightly dazed, like bread just out of the oven. Your skin is pink with heat, and your breath clouds the cool evening air as the last of the steam clings to your hair. It's twilight now, that dusky hour, when everything glows a little softer and the sky forgets its edges. You walk slowly toward the harbor, drawn by the hush of water and the rhythm of boats rocking gently against the dock. The sea looks like hammered silver in this light, flat, quiet knowing. A pair of longships are moored side by side, their dragon heads silhouetted against the last streaks of sun. You linger at the edge of the dock where salt stings your nose and the wooden planks creak softly under your boots. A fisherman crouches nearby, mending a net. He hums an off-key tune about a gull and a jealous seal. You pretend not to eavesdrop, but he chuckles and nods. He knows. Nearby, a group of young men are unloading sacks from a low, squat boat. Grain, maybe. Or wool. One trips and curses, spilling the sack open. Out roll apples, bruised but fragrant. Everyone laughs. The mistake becomes a joke. Someone tosses you one and you catch it with a grin. Historians still argue whether Viking ports were as busy and organized as later medieval cities. But here in this forgotten town, everything runs on practiced chaos. It's noisy, sure, but it works. People know where to be, when to speak, when to move. There's a choreography to it all. You sit on an overturned crate, munching your apple, watching the sky dim by degrees. A lantern flickers to life nearby, then another. The world shrinks to warm pools of light scattered like gold coins across the harbor. A woman walks by with a bundle of firewood strapped to her back. Her eyes meet yours briefly, and she offers a faint smile before vanishing down a narrow path. You wonder who she is, what her day looked like. Maybe she wonders the same about you. Back toward the town center, you follow the faint sounds of music. Not harp music, something cruder, louder. You pass a group of children drawing figures in the dirt with sticks, the shapes already half erased by footsteps. Then you find it the hall. Not the grand towering kind built for kings. This one's low wide and built more for warmth than for intimidation. But inside it's lively, really lively. You step into a haze of smoke, mead, and song. The hearth burns cheerfully at the center, casting everything in amber glow. Shadows dance across the walls, across faces. A man with a patchy beard strums a lyre while another pounds a skin drum. The rhythm is fast, repetitive, a little hypnotic. You find a seat at a long bench near the fire. A plate of roasted root vegetables is passed down to you. Then a horn of something that smells sharp and fermented. You drink. It's not bad. It's definitely strong. A woman next to you leans in and says something about the drummer being her cousin, and also possibly cursed. You're not sure if she's joking. Probably. Maybe. Across the hall, a group is reenacting a scene from some legend you don't recognize. One man wears a bear pelt and growls comically. Another pretends to stab him with a wooden spoon. Everyone cheers. Historians still debate whether Viking feasts were truly rowdy or more ceremonial, but in this moment it doesn't matter. This feels real. Laughter bubbles up like spring water. Someone spills a drink and nobody minds. The fire crackles. A child runs past trailing a string of wooden beads. An old man sleeps sitting up, snoring softly with his arms crossed. The music shifts to something slower, almost melancholy, and you feel the day begin to settle into your bones. A woman with braids wrapped like a crown begins to sing. Her voice is low, sweet, and slightly rough around the edges. The hall quiets. Even the fire seems to listen. You don't understand the words, but you understand the feeling. The song ends, and for a moment there's only breath and fire. You stand slowly, leaving your half-finished drink and slipping outside. The night is full now, blanketing everything in deep velvet. Stars press down like thumbprints on wet ink. You look up. There's no moon, just constellations older than memory. Maybe someone here can name them. Maybe not. They seem less like guides and more like silent companions. You walk without aim for a while past closed shutters, past sleeping goats, past a black cat that watches you with the silent authority of someone who's seen it all before. Eventually you reach the edge of town again, the same low wall where you sat earlier. Only now it feels different, quieter, more intimate. You sit again this time, leaning back, letting your head tip up toward the stars. A wind picks up, not cold, just insistent. It smells of seaweed and smoke and wool. You exhale slowly, letting the day peel away in layers. You remember the storyteller, the market, the bathhouse, the soup, the laughter, the stranger's smile. You didn't expect this town to feel like anything, but somehow it does. You wake just before dawn, though wake might be generous. More like you drift upward from a half-sleep, eyes grainy, spine complaining, softly, breath misting in the chilled morning air. The town is still cloaked in that pre-sunlight hush where everything holds its breath. Even the roosters haven't worked up the nerve to start yelling yet. You stretch stiff limbs and rise from the bench by the town's edge where you must have dozed off. Somewhere nearby, a dog shakes off the night with a chain clink and a low whine. The sky above is pale iron, the first promise of light not yet honored. You decide to walk slow, quiet, like you might startle the silence. Past shuttered homes with thatched roofs beaded with dew, past hearths that haven't yet been lit again. You follow the scent of cold ash and yesterday's bread. Down a narrow alleyway, you find the baker already at work. She's older hands, dusted white hair, tied up in a cloth spotted with flour from a dozen yesterdays. She doesn't greet you, just nods and gestures to a rough stool by the door. You sit without speaking, and she continues kneading dough with the quiet focus of a priest in mid-prayer. The first loaves hit the oven. Wood smoke curls up through a hole in the thatch. You catch the edge of warmth. Your stomach reminds you that meat and root vegetables don't last forever. Historians still debate whether Viking towns had formal bakeries or if everyone just baked at home. But as the scent of crusty rye fills the air, you don't really care. This is breakfast, and it's perfect. The baker finally breaks the silence. You're not from here, it's not a question. You smile, say nothing. She hands you a heel of bread anyway. You chew slowly, savoring the crunch of crust, the soft, steaming center. Outside, the street begins to stir boots on dirt. The faint jangle of a harness, a goat bleating with melodramatic urgency. You wander again, bread in hand. By now, smoke curls from most chimneys and a child runs past with a bundle of kindling bigger than she is. You pass a woman milking a goat, her braids swinging gently as she hums to the animal. The goat looks unimpressed. A man waves you over. He's laying out fish on wooden racks to dry. Salt-crusted stiff, the fish gleam like little armored soldiers ready for preservation. You nod, politely wrinkle your nose, move on. By the time the sun cracks the horizon, the market is waking again. Not the bustle of midday, but a quieter version, crates being shifted, cloth stalls propped back into place, someone chasing down a runaway chicken with a sack. You find yourself drawn back to the dock where the longships are beginning to stir. A few men untie ropes, others lug sacks of barley and coils of rope. One man is sharpening an axe with a stone so methodically, it looks like meditation. Your eye catches a boy barely in his teens balancing a basket on his shoulder. He stumbles slightly and rights himself, glaring at anyone who might laugh. Nobody does. Everyone's been that kid before. A shout from farther down the dock breaks the rhythm. A ship is preparing to leave. You see a crew gathering rough-bearded men, a woman with arms like a blacksmith, an older sailor with a limp and a pipe clenched between his teeth. They laugh loudly, the kind of laughter that covers nerves. They check ropes, test sails, exchange gestures that are part superstition, part habit. Historians still argue whether Viking trade expeditions were organized businesses or looser family ventures. Either way, these people look like a team braced for the sea, bonded by the unknown. Someone asks if you're joining them. It's half joke, half offer. You shake your head and they nod like that's the right call. Still, a woman presses a small token into your hand, a smooth piece of driftwood carved with a simple rune. For luck, she says. You nod, pocket it, and watch them push off into the current sails, catching the wind like wings. The sun is warm now. The town is fully awake. You wander back toward the center, past the smithy, where the bellows puff like a sleepy dragon, past the bathhouse, where water sloshes as the fires are rekindled for another round of sweating and scrubbing. Past the hall, now quiet and almost reverent in the morning light. Back near the long bench where your journey started, you sit again. The town breathes around you alive, ancient familiar now in ways you didn't expect. And as you sit there still clutching your carved token, you realize something nothing about this place is grand. There are no gilded towers or marble columns. No one's wearing a crown. There are no proclamations or parades. But everything works. People wake, work, laugh, bathe, trade, eat, fight a little, sing badly, then do it all again tomorrow. And that's the secret, isn't it? Empires might rise and fall, but it's the rhythm of ordinary days that holds everything together. You stay seated a while, tracing the carved rune with your thumb. It's smooth from handling edges softened by countless fingers. You wonder if it's a protective charm or just someone's idle whittling. But either way, it feels weighty now, like a relic from a life you've temporarily slipped into. A rooster crows late. Maybe it overslept. You smile. You rise again and walk toward the edge of town where life gets a little less busy and a little more self-sufficient. Here, the sounds of bartering fade into the calls of birds and the swish of wind through reeds. You pass a small paddock where shaggy sheep look deeply unimpressed with existence. One stares at you, chewing like a philosopher. A woman nearby is spinning wool. Her spindle dances with practiced rhythm, fingers flicking and pulling as if by muscle memory. She glances up and gives a curt nod, then resumes her work. There's a quiet pride in it. This isn't a market job or a performance. It's survival dressed in wool and rhythm. Historians still argue whether spinning and weaving in Viking towns were communal activities or solitary tasks. You get the feeling it's both. Today, she's alone, but her woven cloth will show up in sleeve sails blankets, threads linking lives. You follow the smell of livestock to a small stable where two boys are brushing down a pony that looks like it's half done with them already. They bicker as they work, probably brothers. One tries to tie the pony's tail into a knot. The other swats his hand away. The pony just blinks at you with ancient patience. Not far from them, a lean dog sleeps in the shade of a cart nose, twitching in dreams. A small girl tiptoes past, carrying a clay jug almost as tall as her knees. She sees you, freezes, then flashes a gap-toothed grin before scampering off, sloshing water all the way. You wander further toward the outer fields. Here the land opens up. Low fences, rows of planted barley, a few cows chewing solemnly as if they understand crop rotation better than anyone else. A man with a long beard and a wide straw hat stands in the middle of the field, holding a wooden tool that's either ancient farming technology or a walking stick with ambition. He raises it like a greeting or a challenge. You wave. He nods and returns to his mysterious field-based ritual. You tread lightly through a path flanked by elder trees, their trunks twisted like dancers frozen mid-spin. The ground is soft with moss, and a crow cackles above you, probably laughing at your modern boots. You come upon a small shrine, just a few stones stacked neatly with a tiny carving of Thor's hammer wedged between. Someone's left dried herbs and a fish scale as offerings. The hammer catches a sliver of sunlight. It gleams like it still matters. Historians aren't sure how personal Viking religion was. Some think it was deeply communal, others say it was handled more privately. Either way, this shrine feels quiet, respectful, not flashy. Just there, like the gods themselves might be. A breeze picks up rustling leaves and tugging gently at your sleeves. You sit on a log near the shrine. The forest edge ahead feels like a doorway, the kind you step through and don't come back from for a while. Suddenly you hear something else. A distant chant, low and steady. You follow the sound around a bend and find a group of women and a few children gathered by the river. They're washing linens and singing something that could be a lullaby or a work song, or both. Their hands move in time with the rhythm slap, scrub, rinse, ring, and ancient choreography. One of them glances up at you and nods, not breaking the beat. Another child splashes too hard and earns a gentle scolding and a laugh. You sit on a nearby rock and watch. The river sparkles like a spilled handful of coins. The song winds down into silence, and the women begin gathering up their work. Wet cloths are folded, chatter resumes, and one child hands you a small white stone completely unprompted. You thank him, though he's already forgotten you and is chasing a frog with wild intent. You walk slowly back toward town. The day is leaning toward afternoon now, shadows shorter, sun warmer, the town stretching into its most productive hours. Back at the market, you see the blacksmith adjusting something in his forge, wiping sweat from his brow with a cloth blackened by years of flame. A customer argues loudly with a merchant over the price of glass beads. A dog tries to steal a fish and gets scolded in 3 languages. It's not chaotic exactly, just real, lived in, beautiful in its own unpolished way. You take a detour past the hall again. A group of youths are practicing with wooden swords out front. The clack of wood on wood echoes through the square. A woman, likely their instructor, circles them, barking commands that would make your gym teacher blush. She stops one boy mid-swing and adjusts his stance. He tries again. Better. Not perfect, but closer. The others nod. She moves on. There's pride in these little moments. In swinging a sword straight, in weaving a perfect line, in baking a crusty loaf that won't cave in. And here you are, a ghost among the living, watching, learning, listening. You linger a bit longer at the training yard where wooden swords thwack against each other like musical instruments tuned to war. One of the younger boys lets out a yell as he lands a strike, and the others groan in playful agony. The instructor claps, once sharp and final, ending the sparring session. The children scatter like sparrows, breathless and gleaming with sweat. A little girl hands the instructor a leather flask. She takes a sip, winces, probably sour milk, and grins anyway. You stroll past them toward the docks again, curious now about what arrives when the tide does. The river is quieter than earlier. A few boats bob gently, sails furled, the occasional gull swooping overhead like a lazy guard on patrol. A group of laborers are unloading cargo sacks of grain ceramic jars and something wrapped tightly in fur, probably dried fish. One worker catches your eye and gestures for you to help. You wave him off, he shrugs, and keeps hauling. A teenage boy sings as he stacks crates. His voice is wobbly but heartfelt, something about a woman who owns too many goats. You chuckle. Historians still argue whether Viking port labor was organized by household, by guild, or just improvised daily. Looking at this mix of locals and foreigners, it's easy to imagine all 3 being true at the same time. Work doesn't wait for systems. It just gets done. You pass a merchant counting beads on a string to tally his sales, muttering to himself in Old Norse. A cat circles his legs, eyeing a dried herring nearby. The merchant notices, mutters louder, and flicks the fish away. The cat wins. Further up the bank, you spot a small group gathered around a storyteller. He's animated, waving his hands as he speaks, his gray beard twitching like it's in on the tail. Kids sit cross-legged in front mouths, open eyes wide. A woman knits as she listens, barely watching the needles. An older man chews something that looks suspiciously like seaweed. The tale involves a talking fox, an unlucky fisherman, and a barrel of mead. You don't understand every word, but the rhythm and expression carry you along. The fox is clever. The fisherman is not. The mead ends up in a surprising place. The crowd bursts into laughter at the punchline. You are pretty sure it involved flatulence. You follow a path behind the dock, winding through a grove of alder trees. The air changes here, cooler, damper. A stream cuts through shallow and singing. A group of older women are collecting herbs in baskets woven from reeds. One plucks a sprig of something and holds it to her nose. She gestures for you to try. You sniff. It smells like pine and pepper and maybe medicine. She nods approvingly, then taps the side of her nose like it's a secret. The herb collectors murmur among themselves in low, lilting voices. You catch bits of conversation. Someone's cough. Someone's dream, someone's chicken that lays eggs too small to bother with. One mentions the gods. Another swears she saw a spirit last night near the burial mounds. The rest nod, not skeptically, not quite believing either, just nodding as if to say, well, it's possible. You re-enter the town from the back, passing low huts with smoke curling from vents. Laundry flaps on lines. A boy sits with his feet in a water barrel, splashing aimlessly, singing about absolutely nothing. At the edge of a narrow alley, you spot two men repairing a cart. One hammers while the other holds the frame steady, muttering advice that's clearly unwanted. The hammering pauses. They argue. The hammering resumes faster. You duck into a courtyard filled with drying fish. The smell is committed. A woman glares at you until you back out, fair. Near the center of town, the bell begins to ring. A low metallic tone, not quite urgent, but definitely calling. People begin drifting toward the great hall again. You follow. Inside, the air is thicker now, warm bodies, the scent of bread and smoke, and the murmur of many voices. A feast is being prepared. Platters of roast meat bowls, of fermented vegetables, flatbreads stacked like edible scrolls. You snag a spot near a pillar and observe. A bard stands up near the center, plucks a lyre, and begins a slow, mournful tune. It's not a song you know, but it presses into your chest like a memory of something that never happened. People hush, even the children. The fire crackles in the central hearth, throwing shadows that dance like spirits on the beams above. One old man lifts a cup, murmurs a toast in a language thick with age, and drinks. A woman beside him echoes the gesture. Soon a ripple of raised cups moves through the room. You don't have a cup, you raise your hand instead. Outside, night has finally settled. The stars are scattered like runes across the sky. A few revelers wander toward their homes, trailing laughter and the occasional off-key note from the lyre. You step outside the hall, air cool and welcome on your skin. There's a figure standing by the water's edge. You walk toward them, and as you get closer, you see it's the rune carver from earlier. He's holding a new piece of wood freshly split. He glances at you, then at the stars. Looks like a good night for stories, he says softly. You nod, and for a moment, you're not a visitor. You're part of this town, stitched into its rhythms, its food, its laughter, its ghosts. The stars above the Viking trading town are brighter than you expect, closer almost. Like you could reach out and pluck one if you really meant it. The river beside you reflects them in slow-moving shards. Nearby, the rune carver begins to scrape his new piece of wood, murmuring under his breath. You watch for a moment longer, then head back toward the homes, curious to see what the night holds in a place like this. You pass small houses with thatched roofs, their doors shut, soft orange light flickering through the seams. You hear whispers behind one wall. Someone is telling a story, maybe a prayer or a tale to lull a child to sleep. Another home hums with low laughter. A dog barks once, then nothing. You're starting to feel how this place settles in the dark. The bustle has faded but not disappeared. It's a quiet that holds things, not one that lacks them. At the edge of the settlement, a woman feeds a goat by moonlight. She talks to it like an old friend. The goat, being a goat, ignores her. A little further on, you spot a pair of young men sitting by a smoldering fire pit. One of them is carving something, a small bird maybe, or a horse. His knife moves slowly, carefully, like he's not just shaping wood, but asking it a question. The other man pokes at the coals with a stick, occasionally tossing in bits of moss just to watch the smoke twist. They nod as you pass. One of them grins. Careful where you step. Spirits don't like to be disturbed. Right. That's comforting. Historians still argue whether Vikings saw these spirits as literal beings or metaphorical memories of the dead. But the effect is the same. People tread lightly at night, not out of fear exactly, but respect. You continue walking and find yourself drawn toward the burial mounds just outside the town, rounded humps in the earth, silent and still beneath the stars. You hesitate. Then again, when are you ever going to be here again? As you approach, the world seems to quiet further, like sound has been turned down without your permission. The air smells different here, drier, more metallic. You can almost hear the echo of ancient rituals carried out in this place. A small figure moves ahead of you. Not a ghost, just a young girl carrying a candle stub. She kneels by one of the mounds, places something, a bit of bread, and whispers a few words. Then she stands and walks away without noticing you. You exhale and head back toward the town. As you pass through the gate, the scent of baked grain floats toward you from one of the still warm ovens. Someone is preparing bread for the next day, flat round loaves meant to feed a family for a week. A cat meows hoping for a crumb. It does not succeed. By now the main hall is quieter. A few people remain, those who always seem to linger after the party. A drunk noble snoozes on a bench, head back, mouth open, utterly unaware of the tiny child poking at his boot with a stick. You wander to a quieter corner where two older women are sorting through skeins of yarn. They speak softly in rhythms that almost lull you to sleep. One of them offers you a square of cloth to sit on. You take it and rest your back against a wooden beam, watching her fingers move, twisting, looping, creating order from chaos. Threadwork like this once clothed a family through every season. And while the silk from the east might shine brighter, the wool spun here by hands like hers bore the true burden of Viking life. They talk about someone's injured ankle, someone else is brewing trouble with a neighbor over a chicken. And always somehow, the weather. Outside, the wind picks up slightly. You hear the banners overhead flap and sigh. You get up and step back into the cool night, your legs a little stiff. You wander again through rows of storage buildings, sturdy places where dried fish tools and trade goods are kept. You peek into one. Inside, racks of drying herbs dangle from beams. A strong earthy scent hits you, mint lavender, maybe wild garlic. A man is sleeping in the corner on a pile of furs. A soft snore. You close the door gently. You pass a house where shadows flicker strangely on the walls. You pause. Then realize it's a game. Children are casting shadow puppets against the inside wall with a small flame. One shadow is definitely a wolf. Or maybe a pig. You're not sure, but you approve of the effort. Eventually, your steps bring you to a quiet garden patch, raised beds, holding cold, hardened vegetables, leeks, cabbage, turnips. A woman kneels in the dirt, patting it carefully. Preparing for tomorrow's planting, she explains softly. Her tone makes it sound like she's talking to the soil more than to you. She points up at the stars and names them. Not by the names you know. These ones are older, hungrier. Watch them long enough, she says, and they'll start to watch you back. All right then, time to move along. You return to the spot you started from the edge of the trading square, now nearly empty. A single torch remains lit, and beside it, the rune carver has finished his piece. He holds it up to the flame. You can't read the runes, but he seems satisfied. He hands it to you. For luck, he says. You take it. The wood is warm, the carving shallow but sharp. A charm, maybe. Or just a reminder that you were here once in this quiet place of noise and stories and stars, and somewhere far beyond this town ships are sailing. Traders are preparing. Letters are being written. But for now the Viking town sleeps. And so can you. You wake to the soft chorus of early footsteps. Some heavy, some bare, moving across the dirt-packed paths of the Viking trading town. The sky above is still bruised with the last blue of night, but thin gold is starting to stretch along the horizon. You're still tucked near the square, and your borrowed cloak smells like smoke and wool. The town stirs slowly like a loaf rising in a warm hearth. There's no trumpet, no rooster fanfare, just practical motion. People shifting firewood, being split water being drawn from wells, and dogs giving lazy barks as if annoyed that the world dares to resume. A woman with thick braids passes by carrying a bundle of nettles and willow bark, likely for tinctures. You rub your eyes and follow the scent of warm liquid which leads you to a steaming pot being tended by a wide-shouldered man who nods toward a wooden bowl. You ladle out a thick barley broth, salty herbal and hot enough to scald. You slurp it gratefully. A teenage boy nearby is arguing with an older woman, likely his mother, about going to sea. He insists he's ready. She insists he's still soft. They both roll their eyes and go back to shelling peas. You step back into the pulse of the town, walking along the edges of the warehouses. The doors are open now, revealing the bones of the place. Stacked pottery bundles of cloth wheels of cheese. Rows of smoked fish hanging from rafters. A few of the merchants are already rearranging their goods for travelers coming in from the hills. You overhear mention of a distant settlement flooding. Another speaks of traders from the north bringing unfamiliar coins, smooth and black, made from glassy stone. Historians still debate whether Viking towns minted their own currency regularly, or mostly bartered, using silver arm rings, hack silver, and foreign coinage picked up through trade and raiding. Either way, there's business to be done. You drift toward the shipyard. Smoke curls from the forge. The blacksmith's hammer has begun its day-long monologue. Clang, clang, hiss. You pause to watch as he tempers a small iron hook likely destined for someone's fishing net. A child runs by with a goose under one arm, both flapping wildly, neither looking pleased. A little past the smithy, you find the longboats again. More workers, now women, caulking seams. Men hoisting planks, even a few kids shuttling tools or fetching water. The air smells of pitch and brine. One elder sits beneath a slanted awning, polishing a carved dragon head that will sit at the prow of a new boat. His hands are stained with resin, but his strokes are gentle, reverent. This isn't just a ship. It's a beast meant to carry them through sea and sky. You make your way back into town just as a small procession passes. A marriage, maybe, or a naming ceremony. A woman carries a baby swaddled in a fur-trimmed blanket, and someone nearby sings a hymn in a low, lilting voice. It's not cheerful exactly, but steady. Near the temple house, a priest carves prayers into wooden charms. He offers one to a young man about to travel east. The man tucks it under his cloak without a word. Belief is quiet here, less about thunderbolts, and more about habit and hope. A sharp whistle distracts you. A caravan is arriving, 2 wagons and a pair of riders. They're dusty from days on the trail, but their faces are sharp with intent. The first wagon is filled with furs, the second with ceramic jars sealed in wax. The riders dismount and stretch, then start haggling before their boots even cool. You overhear them bartering in a Creole of Norse Slavic and something else that sounds Eastern. The marketplace absorbs them without hesitation. They're not strangers here. No one ever really is, not for long. Historians still argue whether Viking towns were truly cosmopolitan melting pots, or if the diversity was seasonal tied to market months. Either way, the mingling is real, and today, it's alive. You drift toward the women's space again near the loom house. The women here are deep into their work. Some are dyeing fabric with crushed berries and herbs. Others twist long threads through complex patterns, their fingers moving faster than your eyes can follow. One woman pauses to adjust her spindle, sees you and smiles. Want to try? She teases. You shake your head and mime, ruining the entire operation. Behind her, baskets overflow with dyed yarns, saffron madder, red woad, blue, and nettle green. These colors don't just clothe people. They signal wealth status, even trade allegiance. You wander toward the edge of town again. A group of children are building their own little market with pebbles, carved toys, and what looks suspiciously like a dead beetle being sold as a rare gem. A boy shouts that his price is 2 pieces of grass and a favor later. A future merchant for sure. You sit for a moment on a wooden bench near a trough where a woman washes radishes. She hums a song that has no words but feels older than the town. You look around, steam rising from morning meals. Hammers singing, smoke weaving skyward, children laughing, merchants haggling, dogs barking, wheels creaking. And suddenly it hits you, this is the real town. Not the drama, not the raiding stories, not even the fame of exploration. Just the daily repetition of necessity, community, and barter. The kind of quiet magic that holds a place together longer than any battle ever could. You close your eyes briefly and listen. The forge, the wind, the call of a gull. It's not glamorous, but it's real. And strangely enough, it's enough. You rise again, maybe for the last time in this strange town, and stroll slowly toward the docks. The wooden planks warm now under your boots as the sun climbs higher. The sea has begun to glitter like hammered silver, and somewhere behind you a cart creaks with the weight of new cargo. A fisherman walks by, a net slung over his shoulder, wet boots squelching faintly. It's late morning now, and everything moves with practiced rhythm. Your eye catches a gathering near the water's edge. A small crowd is forming, a ship is preparing to leave. Not a war vessel, not today. This is a trader's boat, its hull packed tight with barrels of salted fish hides and sacks of grain. Ropes are being coiled. A steersman checks the rudder. A dog barks at a gull perched smugly atop a sailpost. A tall woman in a blue wool cloak indigo, dyed likely expensive, pours something from a horn cup onto the ground beside the boat. A farewell libation. Some things must be appeased before the sea will behave. Nearby, a child waves at someone aboard, likely a brother or cousin. He's grinning and crying at the same time, and you pretend you're just squinting into the sun. There's a final flurry of rope and oar. Shouts in Norse. The ship pushes off, riding low in the water, the oars rising and falling in perfect time. A gull shrieks overhead, then follows. You wander back toward the market where new wares are being laid out. Dried herbs tied in neat bundles, beads of amber and bone. A woman offers you a bowl of sour milk and honey. You take it, thank her, and sip carefully. It's shockingly good sharp, but comforting. At the edge of town, you pass a line of young men sparring with wooden blades under the watchful eye of an older warrior with one eye and a thick mustache. He nods at you once, not unkindly, then barks another order at his recruits, and just beyond them the edge of the forest begins. You pause, gazing into the thick green. It looks peaceful enough, but you know everyone here knows it can swallow you in minutes. Bears, bandits, old gods still rumored to dance under the pines. Best to stay near the firelight. Historians still argue whether Viking towns leaned more into agriculture or trade for their survival. Some evidence suggests seasonal farming was vital. Others say it was always about the boats. But standing here on this humid day, hearing both the whistle of birds and the clatter of hooves, it's clear that both worlds mattered. Earth and water, soil and sail. You turn again toward the heart of the town. Smoke curls gently from cooking fires. The temple bell rings softly, one note, then another. A call not just to prayer, but to presence. To remember the day, the place, the breath in your chest. As you walk back through the market, familiar faces nod to you. The blacksmith wipes his hands and mutters something approving. The soup boy tosses you a wink. The loom women wave their spindles in mock farewell. And you begin to realize this wasn't a museum or a fantasy. This was someone's Tuesday. You pass the central square again now, full of life and haggling. The man who sold you barley bread is arguing about sea salt. A girl shows off a new necklace, clearly proud. A goose waddles past, carrying a leaf like it's the crown of a king. You sit one last time on that sun-warmed bench. The town breathes around you. It is not trying to impress. It does not care for your history books. It exists because it must. Because trade happens. Because fish need smoking. Because someone needs to sew a tunic. Because someone needs to leave. Because someone else needs to stay. That's it. That's the miracle. Not just the boats or the axes or the voyages, but the ordinary. The mundane, the daily, the steady heartbeat beneath all the sagas. You look out at the path you came from. You won't take it back, not today. Let the world spin a little without you. You'll rest here a while longer. And now let's begin to drift. The sun is high now, but your thoughts grow soft. The heat on your back is like a thick wool cloak gently pressing you into stillness. Around you, the town continues its slow, unhurried rhythm. The clink of tools, the murmur of trade, the steady creak of a loom. But all of it feels distant now, like waves far out at sea. Your fingers trace the edge of the bench. The wood is worn smooth, shaped by 100 hands before yours. You close your eyes and imagine the passage of seasons here, snow on the docks, spring mud on the paths, autumn winds singing through the sails. Each one has passed through unnoticed yet essential, like breath. You think of the messages carved into wood, the prayers tied to tree branches, the coins dropped in wells. Quiet hopes folded into the fabric of this town, hidden beneath the noise and the smoke and the fish guts. And somehow, those hopes remain, tucked into every stone, every stitch, every wave goodbye. Let your breath settle now. Let the thoughts slow. The forge grows quieter. The ships fade into the mist. The world does not need you right now, and that's okay. Tonight you rest among tradespeople, dreamers, children, and warriors. Tonight you sleep in a town lost to time, but not forgotten. Sleep well.